Silent Hill is one of the big two of the survival horror video game genre, alongside its contemporary Resident Evil, where Resident Evil centers around trained soldiers fighting off B-movie monsters in strange exotic locations. Silent Hill's focus is on everyday people who find themselves drawn for various reasons to a small abandoned American town. Where Resident Evil's horror is visceral and often action-packed, Silent Hill differentiates itself by keeping the tone much more subdued, relying heavily on an oppressive atmosphere, unnerving visuals, and eerie, dissonant, sometimes cacophonous music and sound design. Both series have rightly been lauded as the best the genre has to offer, and were big enough hits that both received big screen adaptations. And while none of the movies have really lived up to the video games they're based on, I'd argue that Silent Hill's movies have whiffed the closest. Well, two of them anyway. 2006's Silent Hill is decent but not great. It sort of retells the story from the first game, but changes some characters and events as Hollywood adaptations do. It's flawed, but it's aight. 2012's Silent Hill Revelation, however, is a whole nother beast entirely. Theoretically, it's an adaptation of the third game, but it's so ridiculously retarded that it winds up in the so bad it's good category along with movies like The Room and Birdemic. It's not a movie you watch because you want to enjoy it on its own merits. You watch it because, well, train wrecks can be strangely entertaining too. Now, all these years later, the third movie in the SHCU drops, Return to Silent Hill, and the first movie's director and co-writer, Christoph Gahn of Brotherhood of the Wolf fame, is back in the director's chair. Now, if I ever even knew this movie was being made, I'd completely forgotten about it, let alone that it had already been released. Suddenly, out of nowhere, I'm seeing reviews popping up talking about what an utter abomination it is, and my curiosity is piqued. I love the first three Silent Hill games, and while the first movie is decent, the second movie is a blast for all the wrong reasons, and a chance to see something that hilariously insane on the big screen sounds like a good time to me. So, is Return to Silent Hill as pants-shittingly bad as everyone is claiming? No. Is it great? No. But it's not the shambling horror that these overacting, bandwagon-jumping, phony-ass hacks are pretending it is just so they can farm for clicks. I'm not saying people have to like it. Hell, I'm just a little above lukewarm on it myself. And I'm not saying that they're wrong for disliking it. I just fucking hate fake, exaggerated, hyperbolic, garbage-tier slop poorly disguised as legit criticism. Anyway, let's dig into it. James Sunderland is tearing down a winding mountain road when he narrowly avoids pancaking into an oncoming 18-wheeler, hitting some luggage that's sitting out in the middle of the road for some reason. The luggage belongs to Mary Crane, who's trying to leave her hometown of Silent Hill just across the lake. She misses her bus thanks to James, so he gives her a ride back to Silent Hill. The two fall in love, and things seem pretty peachy, except for all the clingy weirdos who also live in the quaint little town. Fast forward a few months, and James is alone and an utter wreck. His therapist or psychiatrist or something calls to remind him of their appointment, but James gets into a drunken brawl, winds up back at his apartment, and discovers a letter from Mary. Hey, maybe she wants to talk about what happened between them that caused the apparent breakup. That'd be nice. Except, she and James didn't break up all those months ago. Mary died. James hightails it back to Silent Hill to look for Mary and figure out just what's going on. Upon arrival, though, he discovers that a lot has happened since he left. An underground fire has cloaked the once postcard pretty town in a blanket of ash and fog, the residents have all abandoned the place, and strange creatures are roaming the streets hunting down anyone unlucky enough to get caught within the city limits. Who sent James the letter? Is Mary really waiting for him in their special place? And does James really want to know the answer? The problem with adapting any story to another medium, especially such a beloved story as Silent Hill 2's, and especially with porting it to a medium with a shorter window in which to tell that story, is that you gotta decide what stays and what goes, and that's a frigging minefield. I remember fans being angry that Tom Bombadil was cut from the Lord of the Rings movies, even though his 2 chapters are easily the weakest part of Fellowship and add nothing to the story. But it just goes to show that no matter what you cut, you're killing someone's sacred cow. But you still have to cut stuff or you wind up with a bloated mess. My biggest issue with Return to Silent Hill is how scattershot it is. There's way too much going on. Christoph Gahn is clearly a real fan of Silent Hill. I remember reading interviews with him back when the first movie was coming out. But I can't help but wonder if that might have hindered him a bit here, that he might have let his inner fanboy take the reins away from the filmmaker. It's like he wanted to tell Silent Hill 2's entire story, complete with all the side characters, but he also really likes all the cult stuff from 1 and 3, so he crammed that stuff in there too. And he wants to do it all in an hour and 45 minutes. Can you say breakneck pace? Here's an example. Eddie Dombrowski is a side character from Silent Hill 2, and fans of the game might have been upset had he been cut from the movie, so of course he's in Return to Silent Hill. The problem is, he has nothing to do. The script is already overstuffed, but Gahn didn't want to cut him, so Eddie shows up to tick a fan service box, does nothing, then is never seen or mentioned again. He just eats up screen time. Angry fans be damned, it would have been better if Eddie never showed up at all. Now, not that I really wanted a straight up retelling of Silent Hill 2, especially after I've already played the game so much, and we just got a remake a few months ago. I honestly would have preferred a wholly original story, but if Gahn had just done a faithful adaptation of that game, I think he'd have had a winner. Silent Hill 2's story is already deep and complex enough to carry a movie, but it's also very simple. It's the story of a man trying to come to grips with the very real and relatable emotions he felt towards his dying wife and his handling of that tragic situation. The added elements here aren't terrible on their own, they just don't belong in James's story, and they end up hurting it by overcomplicating it and blunting the emotional impact. Also, the Silent Hill games are pretty quiet, with loud, startling moments kept to a minimum. That way they don't lose their punch. Here, it's the other way around, and the creepiness and tension from the games is almost completely lost. Looks-wise, the movie looks as good as a lot of what's out there. That is to say, not amazing. It's got that obviously shot on green screen look, but when that's 99% of all the movies made these days, it's getting harder to care. I really hope that's not just a sign of my standards lowering. I don't know, it's just tough to gripe about it in this movie when I give others like Primitive War a pass for it. Return to Silent Hill had a budget of around $20 million, and it more or less looks like it. I know I bring up Godzilla Minus One a lot since it was only made for $15 million and looks as good as it does, but I really didn't see anything here that just slapped me in the face with how bad it looks. In fact, it doesn't even look that bad, it just looks okay. The creatures look decent, but I have one major gripe and a few nitpicks concerning them, if you'll indulge me. First, the nitpicks. I've never liked how the nurses were presented in any of the Silent Hill movies. The super fast, jerky movements just look dumb. Looks-wise, they look fine, but their movements remind me of something you'd see in an edgy nu metal music video or something. If they moved slower and more menacingly, it'd be great, but as they are, they just aren't scary. Never liked them. The second nitpick is that, along with moving too fast, we see too much of the monsters. I wish they'd been a little more obfuscated and we almost never got a real clear shot of them, like in The Mist. But Gahn just mashes them right into the camera, front and center, and it just doesn't work. Now, before I talk about the big gripe, I want to throw out a very minor spoiler warning for anyone who hasn't played the games yet. I'm not going to mention anything specific, but if you don't want a pretty important thematic element of the video game spoiled, go ahead and skip to this time. Alright, since I know nobody actually skipped ahead, let's just move along. The monsters in the Silent Hill series are all manifestations of some facet of somebody's psyche, not necessarily the main characters though. With the exception of one that's linked to one of the side characters, all of the monsters in Silent Hill 2 stem from some very specific personal traumas of James's. James has some very specific feelings regarding sex, and that's why most, if not all, of the monsters he manifests have sexual design elements. That's why the nurses and the other monsters look the way they do, and that's why they don't make sense in any of the other movies or games. They are James's personal monsters. In Return to Silent Hill, there's no indication that James has these feelings towards sex, and so the monsters' sexualized designs don't really make any sense here, even though it's James Sunderland. I get it, they look cool, but the why of their designs is what elevates the monsters of the Silent Hill games from merely cool and creepy to truly unnerving masterpieces. Pyramid Head also represents another element from James's mind, and that is represented here, so at least his being in Return to Silent Hill does make sense, unlike his inclusion in the other two movies. And while I'm glad they toned his design and presence down a bit here, thanks to all the other stuff being shoehorned in and the movie needing to move, we never get any satisfying payoff with him. And after all that griping, do you want to know what I really think the biggest problem with Return to Silent Hill is? My biggest issue with Return to Silent Hill is how scattershot it is. Yeah, alright, you got me. But in all seriousness, when the movie slows down, it actually approaches being pretty damn good. Silent Hill's scariness, like I said, comes from anxiety and dread more than loud noise and jump scares. And the rare parts of the movie where the tension and atmosphere are allowed to do their jobs are pretty well done. And for me, that's the biggest bummer of Return to Silent Hill. There are brief moments where you can actually see a good movie peeking through. Christoph Gahn is a competent filmmaker, and there are some shots and camera work, yes I know it's almost all CG, that are really interesting, effective, and kinda nice to look at. And I've not seen Jeremy Irvine in anything else, but he's decent here as James Sunderland, and the scenes where he's allowed to act and show emotion demonstrate that with a better script, he could have carried it. Silent Hill is one of my favorite series in any medium, and Silent Hill 2 is rightly hailed as the crown jewel of the franchise. Its story is incredible and blew my teenage mind when it came out back in 2001. Return to Silent Hill is not the nuclear meltdown level catastrophe that all the YouTubers are fake hyperventilating about. Unfortunately, it's also not great. Way too many moving parts, way too noisy, but just enough good stuff that it only bums you out more to think of what might have been if Gahn had restrained himself a bit. So after all of that, can I recommend Return to Silent Hill for anyone? Well, if you're a die-hard fan of the Silent Hill games, then I can't really recommend any of the movies. But if you're up for watching a couple solid 5.5 to 6s with some interesting elements to them, then both Silent Hill and Return to Silent Hill might be worth a rental. However, if watching two oil tankers collide and burst into flames in the middle of a crowded harbor sounds like your idea of fun, then I wholeheartedly recommend Silent Hill Revelation.